Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillah. In order to understand and deepen our opportunities and abilities and the faculties which we've been given, which are made hidden to most of us, to access some of the secrets of speech, the asrar of our words, the asrar, the secrets and the mysteries of our ability to communicate and flow and exchange meanings between two human souls, then we need to polish that mirror. We need to cleanse and cultivate that place. And this is why thus far we really had a pretty heavy focus on some of the defects of the tongue, some of the ailments which ultimately are rooted within a person's soul. It's not an issue with one's vocal cords, with one's lips, tongue. It's something, but the tongue as the translator for what's upon the heart is one of the most powerful signs and indicators for the state of a person's soul. Through it, we're able to understand something a bit of our own selves, and although that can seem daunting, self-knowledge is of primary importance in one's journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. The one that knows themselves knows Allah. And in explaining that, one of our teachers mentions that what this means is if a person is made privy to something of their own inward state, they're given some kind of insight. And an insight is a positive thing, even though that which you may have an insight onto may not necessarily feel like the greatest thing to be looking at. But if a person is given some kind of insight, and if they do see discrepancies, there's a light that enters into the heart for a multitude of reasons. But if it enters into the heart, and you become aware that, wait a minute, that shouldn't really be there, you know, then what happens is a person, if they're, once again, they go through this process and this flow of tawfiq, they follow things through, they don't just stop and become frightened and then intoxicate themselves and turn away from themselves, but they have a bravery and a courage, you know, this mujahada, this spiritual strive and struggle against their own self. And that's the hardest thing, because you can never run away from that enemy. You're faced with it every time. Every time you look in the mirror, every time you speak, every time you listen. The world in which we experience is, you know, on the sensory level, is all affecting and impacting our spiritual states. It's inescapable. But if a person really starts to engage in that process of purification and cleansing and rectifying and cultivating their nafs, their ego, their state, then, you know, those things will start to be weeded out. Okay, if a person, for example, was accustomed to a lifetime of backbiting, the moment that you're able to have that kind of awakening and recognition, that's actually something that I do. That's the way I do that a lot. All of a sudden it can seem daunting. What does that mean? But Allah's only disclosed that to you by a means of a book, or by means of a teacher, by means of whatever it means it may be. But ultimately it's rizq. It's a form of sustenance. It's something Allah, which is provision. It's spiritual provision which Allah is unlocking for you. Why? Just to make you feel like the worst person, just to make you feel useless, just to make you feel like giving up. In fact, the opposite is actually the case. If Allah loves someone, He'll open up this this process of disclosing some of those things within their souls. As the Imam mentioned, one of the worst sins is actually to believe that you're, one of the worst wrongs of the heart, wrongdoings of the heart, is to actually believe that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm absolutely fine. No defects, no ailments. I'm practically perfect in every way. And more often than not, that person knows that's not where they're at, but it's yet another camouflage in order not to deal with the wound. Imam Ghazali says, look, there's a wound taking place. There's a wound which you have, and it's becoming septic, and it's not nice, and you need to deal with it before the implications become eternal, and you're unable to deal with it. Those opportunities for the divine disclosure become enveloped and wrapped up and locked away. For eternity, now's the opportunity to change. Now is the opportunity to train. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And in that, let the ones who want some competition, you want to compete, let them compete. Compete in that. Compete in controlling the self, rectifying the ego, and allowing those spiritual realities and mysteries to slowly be disclosed to a person in accordance to one's himma. The knowledge is here, it's been given to us, alhamdulillah. All we have to do now is apply it with sincerity. And then they said that if a person goes through this process, whereby they continuously work on themselves, if they slip, they go back to knowledge. So much of what the Imam has spoken about is the importance of really accurate, insightful conceptualization, understanding what this is about. That's what I just said there, and not camouflaging it with the excuses of the nafs. Taking it for what it is, wipe it away, try and take it away. Sometimes if you try and weed out, a flower bed, other things are going to sprout. I didn't see that before. You need to keep on doing it until all of the remnants and the roots are all completely extracted. And then what happens? مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ. So they know themselves. They work upon themselves. They weed out those discrepancies within the ego and within the soul until there's nothing left. Until there are no weeds. Until all you get is that which is pleasant, and that which is fragrant, and that which is positive, and that which is healthy, and that which ultimately is nabawi. That's the goal. Not to be empty, but to be nabawi. To be nabawi, to be prophetic, to be like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, in one final round in the ring, our nafs with Sayyidina Imam al-Ghazali for today. Once again, this is a short course, an abridgment of a much longer and extensive and detailed text. But just to make these things accessible, these are things which are applicable to every single one of us. We just wanted to go through some of the remaining defects and just reflect something on each one of them. Things like backbiting, I think, needed its own section. I think its own session. It's really important that we're mindful of these. And once again, just to reiterate, if we can just work on that, if we can come out of Ramadan and really sincerely not allow our egos, to backbite, not allow ourselves to backbite, we'll see spiritual change. It's not just words. These things are real. These things are really real. If we work upon ourselves, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. If we really put in that effort, then these things will have a real change upon us. So he talks about sukhriya wal istihza, mockery, mocking someone. First thing he says, he goes straight for the knockout punch. وَهَذَا مُحَرَّمٌ. It's haram. قال تعالى, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهن. Oh, you who believe. يا أيها الذين آمنوا. Oh, you who believe. لا يسخر قوم من قوم. Let not one peoples mock another peoples. عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم. Maybe that they're better than them. The meaning, الاستهانة والتحقير والتنبيه على العيوب والنقائص على وجه يضحك منه. That's the meaning. So the meaning is istihana, to belittle someone. Something which we don't find the Prophet ﷺ would do ever. Not a single moment. Never would he belittle anyone ﷺ. With tahqir, once again, belittling, just with tanbih ala al-uyub, really kind of showing people's faults up, bringing them to the surface. When naqais and deficiencies, discrepancies within their own character or soul, or whatever it may be, or form, the way you look, your clothes, style, whatever. Ala wajhin yudhaka minhu, in a way which causes people to laugh. So it's doing something to look down upon, which ultimately, which abases a people or a person in order to make someone laugh. And it may be related to something that someone does or someone says, and it may be related, you may have that mockery may be acted out by something that you do or say. And it may be through a subtle allusion or a hint. The Prophet ﷺ said, Hassan, it's by Imam al-Tirmidhi, من عير أخاه بذنب قد تاب منه لم يمت حتى يعمله. The one that you could say mocks his brother with a sin that he's already made tawbah from. Ayyar is also just to kind of point out, someone's sins. لم يمت حتى يعمله. That person won't die until he does it himself. The Prophet ﷺ came to raise people, not to mock and abase. He came to raise people, ﷺ. This is, once again, if we take it in a broader sense, this is part of what's in positive speech, is what I'm saying. Is it positive? Is it healthy? Then we move on to ifsha sir, disclosing secrets or a private affair, something which is a person wants to remain private, just disclosing that. And in this, he says, it's a form of harming and neglecting the rights of a friend or of a person that you know. So somebody has almost honored you by disclosing a secret to you, and you've been complacent in that trust, that amana, and just giving it out to people. The Prophet ﷺ said, if a person mentions something to you, has a conversation with you, speaks to you, and then turns, ثم التفت فهي أمانة. It's an amana, it's a trust. What does that mean? If someone says, they're speaking to you, and then they go like this, looking that nobody else is watching. That now it's an amana upon you, it's a secret. Anything that person says you, speaks to you is an amana, it's a trust. الحديث بينكم أمانة. That's the riwayah from Ibn Abi Dunya. The conversation which is taking place between you is an amana. I mean, it's not allowed to be disclosed to anyone else except with permission of the other person. قال الحسن إن من الخيانة أن تحدث بسر أخيك. It's a form of khiyana, really foul word in the Arabic language. It's the opposite of amana. The person has no trust, just deceptive and untrustworthy. And tuhadditha bi sirri akhik, to speak openly or disclose the private affairs of your brother. وهو حرام إذا كان فيه إضرار. So it says it's haram if it causes harm to the person. And even if there's no harm, then it's still a blameworthy thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. It's not a good thing to practice. You know, subhanAllah, as Muslims, the mu'min is a person of iman and a person of aman, a person of safety and trust, and we should be really aware of this in our relationships. You know, that we don't disclose people's private affairs, and we're mindful of what people would like to be disclosed and not. It's part of the hurma, part of the sanctity of a believer, of a person. And he says, al-wa'd al-kadhib, false promise. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود. Oh, you who believe, fulfill your contracts, fulfill your oaths, stand up to your oaths. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extolled the Prophet Ismail alayhi salam when he said, إِنَّهُ كَانَ الصَّادِقَ الْوَعْدِ. Indeed, he was true in his promise. So it's mentioned, إِنَّهُ وَعْدَ إِنسَانٍ فِي مَوْضِعٍ في موضع فنسي ذلك الإنسان فبقي إسماعيل 22 يوما في انتظاره. The Prophet is mentioned that Sayyidina Ismail promised, had an appointment with him, had a meeting with a person, and the person forgot about the meeting. So he actually waited for 22 days in the place, just waiting for the person to come. And then we have al-kadhib fi al-qawl wal-yamin. Just general lying. وهو من قبائح الذنوب. It's one of the most ugliest of wrongs of the heart. It's one of the people that Allah does not look to on Yawm al-Qiyamah, a person that lies or makes a false oath. قال سيدنا علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه وكرم وجهه أعظم الخطايا عند الله اللسان الكذوب والشر الندامة ندامة يوم القيامة. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib رضي الله عنه said the biggest, most atrocious of transgressions with Allah is a person to have a tongue which is just accustomed to lying, is used to lying all the time. And the worst form of regret is the regret on Yawm al-Qiyamah, where there's no benefit to the regret. La ilaha illallah. And there are certain times when it's legitimate to, you could say, not tell the truth. Maybe it would be a different word to lying. There's a rukhsa, there's dispensation. And there are different examples of this. Typically that's around rectifying between, if two people have had some kind of dispute, then it's permitted to kind of, no, but they really like you. And like, no, and maybe they don't, but it's with a good intention. But one needs to be very careful in this context also, that one doesn't dig oneself into a deeper hole. We have all sorts of lies now, like a white lie, and also in war. That's one of the times when it's It's a form of khida'. War in itself is a deceptive, strange thing. It's actually permissible as a form, because it's purposeful, it's related to like a martial strategy. So if it's to do with that, it's okay. And they say also to mention to one's spouse as well. And that doesn't mean that one just creates a series of lies in the house. You know, maybe if someone, you know, doesn't look that good on that day, that you mention it in order to make them feel in a good way. That's not considered lying. To create amicability and, you know, a nice family life. There are certain things, you know. But even after that, he says, but it's best not to lie. If you can approximate, you can kind of, there's a way of, one has to be careful of becoming too cunning in this. But there's a way of not necessarily mentioning, you don't have to lie, but you're also not necessarily mentioning the truth. You know? So one has to do that and also know that if it's only for one of these dispensation, in the context of one of these dispensations, and you're not using it once again as a subtle camouflage. It's not entering into the field on your soul, and it's trying to, you know, it's like infiltrating. But in reality, it's just the nafs in a particular kind of camouflage. And they say it's also similar with young children as well. However, all of these things is appropriate. It's best not to do it. This is a whole chapter in and of itself, but just for brevity of time, I just wanted to kind of skim through it, just to know, like, it's not good to lie. So we talked about ghiba yesterday. I think we need to go for a recap, probably. Bismillah. SubhanAllah, ghiba is a long chapter. A lot to be said. Allah preserve us from all of these things and rid them out of us. Now, another one which is kind of related to ghiba, to backbiting, is namima. Namima, these sound like old-fashioned words, typically. Tale-bearing. That's not something which is in common contemporary language. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا يدخل الجنة نمام. A person that spreads gossip, really. That's probably more contemporary than tale-bearing. A gossiper does not enter Jannah. He also said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ألا أخبركم بشراركم. Should I not inform you of the worst, the most foulest amongst you, the evil amongst you? قالوا بلى. The Sahaba, they said, indeed. قال صلى الله عليه وسلم المشاؤون بالنميمة. Those that spread gossip. المفسدون بين الأحبة. Those people that corrupt between people's relationships, which are deeply woven and based upon love and care and deep friendship. People that just cause corruption and fitna between them. The one that spreads false news, false gossip about a Muslim, with one word to kind of denounce him or to decry him, to make him look, to lower him, to abase him, with no true right, with no principle, then Allah will do the same to him. في النار يوم القيامة, in the hellfire on يوم القيامة. حد النميمة. So the definition of namima, of tale-bearing. So it's to do with one person speaking about the affairs of someone else to someone else, to another person, to a third party. In that which, and exposing something that they would not like to be exposed about their own private life or anything to do with them. Even if the one who is tale-bearing, the one that's gossiping, or the one that's listening to the gossip, doesn't see that there's a big deal, isn't offended by this. That's just our culture, that's just the way we roll. But would that person that you're speaking about, would they feel offended? That's the point. He says the reality of tale-bearing gossip is really just, once again, disclosing. Ifsha'u sir, it's related to disclosing people's secrets. There's so much in our deen is to do about the sanctity of another human being. You know, our deen is a noble deen. It's about honoring other people. You don't just go and use words to discount or decry another person. You know, ifsha'u sir, really kind of disclosing a private affair of somebody. And literally to tear down a veiling of privacy. Amma yukrahu kashfu. And that, and in anything that they would not like to be disclosed to other people. I don't want you to tell someone that. I don't want you to say that to someone. Why did you go and tell that person? You know, why did you say that? Oh, it didn't mean any harm. It's not about what you mean. It's about the deen. It's about, the deen says you shouldn't be doing that. It offends. I didn't mean any harm. They don't see it as a big thing. No, but I'm offended by it. Why would you do that? So it goes back to the person. Would that person feel offended or hurt were they to be exposed to it? That's namima. Billah. Yeah. Inshallah, we can have some time at a later stage to deepen our exploration of these things. Really, these things take a long time because it's a lifelong process. But it's also important to take it bite-sized. At least there's a way in to understand in general. This is something we should really try and be veering towards, paying attention to, and trying to, once again, tease out these discrepancies from our egos. He goes on to kalam dhil lisanain, the conversation of the one of two tongues, hypocrisy. ويتردد بين المتعاديين ويكلم كل واحد بما يوافقه. طيب. So what this is actually to do with, like, is in English we call that two-faced person. And this is to go between two parties, and just, this is what, I'm with you, I agree, and then go to the other person, the completely opposite end of the scale of the argument. Like, no, I'm with you, I get what you're saying. You should do this to them. And divide and conquer. That was a whole political strategy for certain places in the world, rooted in a disease. Billah. لا إله إلا الله. أخرج البخاري في الأدب المفرد وأبو داود بسند حسن وأبو نعيم في الحلية وابن أبي شيبة. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man kana lahu wajhan fi dunya," the one that's two-faced in the dunya, in the world. "Kana lahu lisanan min an-nar yawm al-qiyamah." He'll have two tongues of fire in the fire of Yawm al-Qiyamah, in Yawm al-Qiyamah. La ilaha illallah. The Prophet ﷺ described this kind of person as the worst of people. Subhanallah. See how important these things are? It has an effect upon the person. Just by something that you say can really be the means of a person. It could be, the great, or asfal as-safilin, the lowest of the low. As the Prophet ﷺ said, are people thrown into hell except for that which their tongues have earned? And then he goes on to madah, praise. And as for them, for ghibah, that's backbiting anyway, but praising people. And he says praising there are issues. If you praise other people too much, it's got some issues for the one who's praising and for the one who's being praised. In terms of the one that's doing the praising, that you might go a bit overboard. You actually start lying. Another thing is this kind of almost like hypocritical, kind of like being a sycophantic, you know, praising overdoing it, praising them too much, and then a person becomes mura'i and munafiq, and you become like a hypocrite. It's to do with, you know, it's to do with how you look in the sight of people. And also, it may be that you're saying something and the person doesn't have that trait. You know, we just need to be very economical with our words. And it may be that that person, he says, is a tyrant or an oppressor. That's not just somebody that's got, like, you know, some kind of political status. Maybe they're a tyrant and an oppressor in their own homes, but the person is delighted by hearing that praise, and it just increases them in their tyranny. Whether that's a tyranny which spills out into the broader realms of society, or the tyranny which just is increased, you know, with the people that live in their own homes. May Allah protect us all and all of the ummah. And in terms of the one that's being praised, it could result in arrogance or conceit, and these are two of the perilous vices. And the second problem is a person, and this could happen, he's just saying there's a potential for this to happen. If a person is praised and they're spiritually cultivated, and they have mechanisms in order to deflect these things, help to deflect these things. But the second issue, he says, a person, you become sluggish and lazy in your spiritual aspiration. Well, I've already reached, I'm already pretty good anyway. وَرَضِيَ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ, and you become content with your own self. You know, I'm all right. Shaykh bin Sanim says, the one that gazes upon his own self with the eye of redan, which is self-content. If you're self-contented, Allah will gaze upon him with the eye of sagt, that Allah will be displeased with him. And a person that gazes upon the lens in which you view yourself, if you look towards your own self with the eye of sagt, that you're displeased with yourself. It doesn't mean self-loathing. It's very different. But you're realistic, you know, and that you know that you're not perfect. And this also is from humility. It shows an absence of conceit. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks upon that person with the eye of rida. Allah is actually content with that person. So it's not that Allah wants us to be sad or self-loathing, or, you know, it's to know that we don't think you're perfect, and don't act with conceit. Be humble, be gentle. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. If a person's free of this, then it's okay to praise people. So there are dispensations within this. You know. Just as even with praising a person and they're not there, there may be certain instances where it's a good, it's a praiseworthy fadila, it's a merit that needs to be shown within the society. Even in, you know, one of the things that our shuyukh would say, if anyone praises you, you say Ameen. Two things happen inwardly upon that. Ameen. One, you're affirming that by saying Ameen, as in, yes, I'd like that to happen. May Allah make that be the case. You're affirming you don't have that trait that you're being praised with. You know, you're a great person. Ameen. You're saying, well, I don't see myself as that, but I would like to be. Ameen. You know, MashaAllah, really, I've seen you this Ramadan. Subhanallah, you've got some great spiritual openings. Ameen. You know, and internally you're saying, like, I'm not making any claims here. I'm nothing. These people are way better than I am, but it's something I'd like to aspire towards. You know, so Ameen. And so you're not only affirming the fact that you may not have these realities, but you're transforming it also into a dua. And that's one of the ways that they would deflect those things. One has to do things graciously. Sometimes it may not be vocalized, but really the issue here is the tawadu al-qalb, humility of the heart. Sometimes, oh no, I'm nothing, no. But then the heart is like, well, I really am. Well, the thing is to know if anyone ever praises you for something and it's genuinely there, it's genuinely good, it's khayr, to know that's all from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, they're just praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not you. It's just something that you through a teaching, or you may have been able to take on, but it's not you. You didn't come up with it. You didn't come up with these, you know, the good character and so on and so forth. So it's him. And once again, if they knew the reality of my own self, they would not be praising me. And finally, for the defects of the tongue, he talks about في الغفلة الدقائق والخطأ. Really, this is to do with the last two are kind of related. But it's to do with like just slips of the tongue. It's amazing the way it kind of like relates back to the first defect, which is just speaking about that which has no meaning to you, and out of fear that it flows down a slippery slope into that which is haram. So if a person just is speaking all the time, particularly in matters of deen, you know, like people may joke, and he's talking about from the awam, from the people that maybe aren't aware of the subtle discrepancies of the religion, and you may joke about something. Someone may make a joke, and it's like a deen type joke, maybe about a hadith or about waliyadu billah, but it has huge implications. You've got to be really careful with this. Yeah. So someone may even say something like, "Oh, didn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say this?" It's like a joke kind of thing, you know, which is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said what he did say was من كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعدته من النار. That the one who lies about me intentionally take his seat in the fire of hell. So there are certain things which is not to be. Lying about me is not like lying about anyone else. You know, he's the archetype of absolute ultimate truth. And you can't, don't in some kind of weird postmodern type relativizing of everything, put him on the same pedestal. He's not, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who was he sent by? You know, who was he entrusted by? Just get that right. There's a time for, you know, that's why he says, like in joking, you've got to be really careful. There's certain things, it's important not to get jokey about certain things. There's a healthy joking, which we can all cultivate, and if it's meaningful and purposeful, it creates a familiarity between people. We're not supposed to be sitting around being miserable all the time, far from it. You know, and the people that have really worked upon themselves, you'll notice that actually they're the best people to be around. They're always smiling, they're always jovial. You know, sometimes we think, no, but how can I have a good time after all this? We can learn how to have a real good time. You know, a way which the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, the things which they exchange, and this is what we're going to be getting onto. If we clear out all this fake stuff, which are, you know, the billboards and the adverts and the news feeds and whatever it is blaring at us. No, this is how to have a good time. This is how to do it. And the shaitan has been teaching people for a long time. This is my manhaj. We don't want that, man. We don't want that way. We want the way. You have the manhaj al-Rahman or the manhaj of the shaitan. The way of the most merciful, the compassionate, that which comes through prophecy. And Allah has His awliya. And you have the way of the shaitan. He has his 20, these will be like plus points. This is like, you know, how to get ahead, how to do well in the world, you know, how to fit in, how to make people like you, how to get a bigger following, how to get more likes. Just do it, bismillah. He's probably got way more than 20 as well. Alhamdulillah, we have access into these things. Alhamdulillah, we have access into this teaching which has been preserved for over 1400 years. There are people, they sacrificed their whole lives just so we could learn the importance of not backbiting. Well, I knew that anyway. Did you? We all need these reminders. فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remind, because indeed the reminder benefits the mu'min. And there's a bishara in that. There's a glad tidings. There's a praise of Allah. If you're benefited from a reminder, then you're a believer. You're a mu'min. If it affects you, if it hurts you, that maybe you have some of these things and you don't want to have that, that's a sign of Iman. Abshir. You know, take the glad tidings, it's a good thing. If you don't care, it's like, so what? That's a sign of nifaq. Ya Rasulullah, what's the sign of the person that Allah wants? Liman yurid, the one that Allah wants. Those are the questions of the Sahaba. What's the sign of the person that Allah wants? Kayfa asbahta? How did you wake up? What was the state in which you woke up? Ya Rasulullah, I woke up, and if I do something which is good, I'm pleased about it and I praise Allah because I know it's only from Him. And if I do something which is bad, it displeases me. It hurts me that I can't worship Allah in the way that He deserves. After all He gives to me, I can't show real gratitude, because that's what it's about. It's about just saying thank you to Allah in your entire being, you know, for who He is. That's ibadah. And I'm displeased when I fall short, I slip of the tongue. What did the Prophet say? He goes, that's a sign of a person that Allah wants. That's a sign that Allah wants you. If you wake up in the morning and you're pleased, if you've been given the opportunity, because it's not like, oh, well, I'm on a mission. I know I'm owning this. No, like if you're able to do good things, to put it in its place and know it's only from Allah. Allah has gifted you those good things as a means of coming close to Him. That's our adab in the deen. If we see something good in ourselves, we attribute it to Allah. If we see those wrong things, that's because of my own ego. That's the way to progress. That's the way to deepen spiritually. And that's a sign of Allah, a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. This is irada. This is irada. This is one of the names of the science of suluk and spiritual wayfaring. It's all interwoven. It's all one big tapestry. You know, there's no dichotomy between the inward and the outward. If you work upon your speech, it's going to have an immediate illuminating effect upon your heart. As you said at the beginning, a person, you know, our shaykh would say, if a person just feels all of a sudden like an immediate deflating in their hal, in their state, you know. فَعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ قَدْ تَكَلَّمْتَ فِي مَا لَا يَعْنِيكَ. Know that you've just spoken about something which is of no concern to you. And that's, as we know, that's not haram. That's just khilaf al-awla. It's preferable to move on. What about if you just backbited someone? What about if you just gossiped? What if you just created, you know, scandal and all these like really heavy things? Where's your hal going to be there? You're going to be in the negative. In the same time, imagine if a person actively, and we're going to slip, but actively each day, no, going to keep on. Wasal al-sayr, keep going. So much of suluk, of spiritual, it's not like, failed at that anyway, might as well give up. No, you will fail, know it. But you've got to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going, because it's not you that causes you to succeed. If Allah sees, those are like knocks at the door of Allah. Allah, I'm here. Allah, I'm trying not to backbite. Allah, I'm trying not to gossip. Allah, I'm trying to approach you in a meaningful way. I'm trying to devote myself to you. Those are like knocks at Allah, I'm here. I'm here, I'm here. And even though I'm flat down on my face, I'm at your door. And I know this is the best place to be. Do you not think Allah is going to unlock that door? If we have resolve, consistency, be persistent, what else are we doing? What else? This is worth everything. We have to really understand the epic nature of what we're doing now. Okay, we're going through a class and we're reading a book. And what book are we reading? Who's it connected to? Where are these majalis connected to? What implication does it have? It doesn't have an implication to your career or your profession, even though that has some weight in one's dunya. This is to do with your akhirah. This is to do with your eternity. You know, look at the last 10 years, how long that felt. Okay, what about 100 years? Most of us will never live to see 100 years. What about 1,000 years? Imagine living for 1,000 years. Imagine living for 10,000 years. Put that next to eternity, it's nothing. Erased. And everything that we say and everything that we utter, and that fluttering of the heart, Because it can be one word, لا يلقيها بال. You pay no attention to it, but it has the means which affects to your absolute eternity. Falling into hell for 70 years, or just reaching the highest levels of one word. Those are the words which we want to be seeking out. Let's not waste our time with the weeds. Let's look for the flowers. Let's take the fragrance of this gift. And if we have, as they say, if we have adab with your words, Allah will teach you a language which is deeper, which is unseen. Most people are not privy to. أكثر كلام العارفين السكوت. The majority of the words, the conversations of the people, of the arif, the knowers, literally, the knowers of Allah, al-arif billah, the Gnostics, the people that are rooted in this tradition, is silence. They don't need to speak. If anyone's ever been in their company, you know they're speaking to you, even if they're not opening their mouths, and they're transferring things. And so much of the tragedy of the decadence of our ummah is we've lost this ability. We've lost the ability to speak. That's one of the biggest calamities that can happen to it. Like, you just can no longer express. And because we're all on this very fine veneer of the dunya, and we're latching onto it. No, I can't really not backbite. Can't really not. This is the world, is whatever. But what are you missing out? And you're one person. You have one life. And when it's gone, that's it. What do you want to do? Is it worth it? Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're going to be there. Was it worth it? We know the answer now. Why are we kidding ourselves? Let's just do it. It just makes sense, doesn't it? May Allah give us tawfiq, Ya Allah. The barakah of these blessed hours in the remaining days of Ramadan. May Allah answer this call, Ya Allah. So much of this is sitting with these people that have already have these. They've already worked on themselves. We've got to find these people. We've got to be with them. We've got to seek their company. We've got to know the worth of what it means, what it is. Iksir, just like an elixir to the heart. So they bring people to Jannah in chains. Just go by, just come. May Allah connect us to them, the true inheritors of prophecy. The people are going to help us in this life and the next. They're representing. Allah connect our hearts to them, have love for them. If you have love in your heart, the people of Allah, that's a sign Allah loves you. That's what they say. And then you should feel broken, because who am I to be loved by Allah? Who am I to have that feeling towards those people? ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. That's the bounty of God. He gives it to whoever He wants. والله ذو الفضل العظيم. Allah is the possessor of the vast bounty, that which Allah has to give. جل جلاله. وبالله التوفيق. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.